Welcome, Christal, to the podcast. How are you doing today? Sorry about all the technical difficulties, but we finally got you on. I'm doing good. It's been a long time coming. I've been really excited about finally getting someone into beekeeping on here because there's so many different things, but beekeeping, especially out here, that's something that I don't see rarely, but also huge potential. Like just because I'm in Southern Alabama, so it's like it doesn't get that cold. And then when it gets hot, I mean, I'm sure bees have something to do, and you'll be sure to tell us about how they keep cool. But just go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody.
So I am Christal Gillo. I am with Hunting Bee Apiary LLC out of Colville, Washington. I am the owner, operator, main full-time beekeeper. So I have over 20 colonies this year that I'm up to, and I'm the main beekeeper. My husband's allergic to bees, so he'll help me build different things from time to time, but I am the full-time beekeeper that tends to the bees.
Wow, that's so. Yeah. So you said LLC. That's something that a lot of people don't really expect or even like think about. It's like, because I know even like back in like medieval times, like the Catholic Church was really big on beeswax candles. I think they are still now. I don't know if they've really changed their policies, but I think it was like 90% all candles. And this is like no light bulbs. So all candles had to be like 90% beeswax for their standards. So
it's true. Beeswax is one of the most purest things that honeybees produce. Beeswax will actually, when you burn them, they have a higher melting point, but beeswax will actually grab the negative ions and they purify your air. So that's why tons of people use beeswax in all their cosmetics and all the other hygiene products, but beeswax is universal, and there's a ton of different uses you can use beeswax for.
Really? So burning beeswax candles, regardless of the fumes that the candle may put off. And now, is it the fumes or the melting wax itself, or both?
It's actually usually most of the time that I've noticed is the wick. So everything is wick dependent. So I've been candling for 3 years now, and I prefer a certain hemp wick because it doesn't emit toxins into the air. I usually get the ones that are not pre-waxed, because the wax, you don't know where it's coming from if they're pre-waxed already. Yeah, so that's usually where you get it from. Sometimes you can make candles that are beeswax candles that are dripless. I have not perfected that 100%. But I do have some really good candles that I figured out how to burn them in the right wicks that make them over 30 hours of burn time.
Oh wow, that's amazing. Yeah. But I was referring to the like you said, the ions taking impurities out of the air. Is like it's the melting of the beeswax that for whatever reason melted beeswax like absorbs impurities.
Or I think it's they say that so it has to probably be whatever the beeswax emits grabs the negative ions and then purifies your air. I mean, I'm not a scientist. It's just what I've heard, that I've read, as to why pure beeswax is important to burn.
Oh, wow. Okay. So yeah, because I mean, that's incredible. So burning a candle purifies air, like, because no one would think that.
Yeah, it has to be beeswax, though. There's a lot of chemicals that you're emitting when you burn paraffin and soy. When people buy those ones that have all the chemicals inside of them with different smells and everything, those are super unhealthy for people. So I try to not add any of that to my candles because I want them as pure as possible, because I do raise pure honeybees.
Okay. Wow. And what is that really like? Like, not to get too detailed into it, but like you can do like full-time like work off of owning an apiary.
Yeah. So I originally had seen beehives on the side of the road, and I told my husband when we were looking for a place to live, like, why don't we do bees? And he said, okay. So I came up with a good business name. And then what evolved is 2 hives. I now have in 3 years gone to over 20. So basically it is a full-time job. I mean, it doesn't have to be, depending upon what state you live in, but for me to overwinter them in the Pacific Northwest, it has become a year-round job for me. Commercial beekeepers that travel and take their bees to pollination fields and stuff, they do full-time all year round beekeeping as well.
Yeah, and that's like a really like kind of I wouldn't call it secret because you can find out about it like everyone that's watching this episode just did, but it's really like unspoken. Like nobody knows about all the beekeepers driving from Texas and Arkansas to California to pollinate the almond fields.
They're learning as social media is blowing up with different forums. There's a ton on Facebook that have a ton of beekeeping forums, but you've got all those really good documentaries that are coming out on Netflix and Amazon, and those are really helping people to learn and understand where our food is coming from and why all of the pollinators are so important, not just the honeybees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I because I remember like even Bill Gates. Sorry, let me to restart real quick. Yeah, even remember like even Bill Gates was like I think he like started like this major branch out of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation where they were like, we need to save our pollinators and the honeybees because I think there was like a big die off, but I then come
Yes.
to find out, wasn't that something to do with like the commercial beekeepers or the corporations that own bees and pollinate like that? That don't they like kill off their bees or have like a high death rate bee? Or like, I don't, because explain that to me because I was
No,
really
so
confused about that.
from what I gather, because I just started beekeeping, I'm on my fourth year. So from what I gathered and learned through all of my years of education, I am literally taking a course every single month for the last 3 years.
Mhm.
But from what I've learned was colony collapse disorder was a really big deal. I think it was around '07 or '08 when it occurred, I think.
Uh-huh.
But colony collapse disorder was a major problem. And so a lot of it, they still haven't figured out exactly what's causing it. They do know the pesticides are a huge problem. So when the
Mhm.
bees are in the commercial area and you spray, the bees are getting affected that way. And then, of course, we do have Varroa destructor mites, and that is a huge problem in our apiary. So where I live, you would think there wouldn't be that many beekeepers, but I have commercial that comes in my 5 mile radius. There's two commercial people. There's me, and then there's a bunch of backyard people around me. So in a 5 mile radius, I'm saturated with honeybees. So even if my bees don't have mites, they're going to get them from other bees that are in the general area because they all share the same flowers. So varroa mites have really caused a huge problem, and that's usually a lot of where we see our viruses coming from. And that's why
Mhm.
still this year they reported that a lot of beekeepers were like up, their deaths were up by like 56% or something this year,
Wow.
just in the deaths of what they lose every year. And so it's unfortunate, but it's something we have been battling since I think it was 1987. They said that the varroa mites have been here. And so we as beekeepers have been battling this for a long time.
Wow. And is there really anything to do? Because surely something that small would be like almost impossible to beat. Like,
It's
I mean,
not, there are treatment-free beekeepers that are able to, like, eventually they're trying to raise different races of bees that have, they're called ankle biters, which are also, they're Varroa specific bees that have a good hygiene and they can actually like clean themselves better and they can knock the
uh,
Varroa mites off, or they also bite the feet off of the Varroa mites. That's why they're called ankle biters. So they do have some of those races that they're trying to have adapt to our races and things like that. But as of right now, we just have different methods that we are allowed to use per the FDA that kill the mites. And there's quite a few different mite treatments out there that are available.
that's see, this is why I love talking with people like you and like just learning all this stuff. Like, because you hear it in passing, but you never like because that's it's like reading the headline of an article and be like, oh, that's interesting. But like the article's not there, it's just the headline. But so tell us about like how one would get into beekeeping because I mean, if because hell, even myself, like I don't really know. I'm sure there's a lot of YouTube videos out there, but just to hear it from someone who's done it is like a definite bonus. So how does one like get into it?
So, in order to get into beekeeping, what I did personally was I did Google. I did a lot of research. And upon that research, I came onto one of the specific sites that I joined, and it was called perfectbee.com. Well, they have a free introductory course. I took that. It ironically is based out of Seattle. So that was comfortable for me because of where I live.
Mhm.
And then what I did was just took the free online course. It was 92 days. I took it during the winter. And then it gave me the comfortability in myself that I felt confident enough that I was going to know what I was doing, what I was getting into. So during the winter time, I went ahead and purchased my first sets of bees. It's cheaper when you purchase them in the winter. And then as I found out, you pick them up in April or May. and then you have to install your bees and go from there. And so I did it all by myself. I figured it out. And then of course, if you don't purchase your bees in the winter, they're sold out by that time, by March, and then you're done. So then you have to wait a whole nother year. But that's just basically it, is doing tons of research, taking online courses for free, especially utilizing online right now with everything going on. Online is the best way to go for school. I've taken a bunch of online courses and I love it. I absolutely gained so much more knowledge. I love reading books, but at the same time, online is just as good with videos and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So is that something that is just preferred, or is it like required, or like is there like certifications required, or you just personally
Yeah,
yourself wanted the education for
it's
self-assurance?
just preferred. So you can do beekeeping on your own. You can do whatever you want. There are state rules and regulations that vary state to state. Some of the states require, that you do have past courses. In here, for instance, our city requires that you pass the course. But otherwise, other than that, it's just a personal preference for different states. You just have to research first. There are different rules and regulations for where you live, where you are only allowed to have one hive in a certain specific area, or if you live in the county, you can have as many hives as you want. It just depends. But we live near a really big city. It's about an hour away from us, and there are strict rules and regulations with their beekeeping because it is such a big city.
And now, what's the cause of that? Are they scared like the bees are gonna do something, or like just kids getting stung?
Absolutely. It's just basic safety for the human race. Yeah. Anybody that's in the area, there's so many people that live next to each other and they don't own any land and things like that. And they're all just on top of each other. And so it's safety first, always.
Okay, yeah, no, I mean that makes sense. That makes sense now that I think about it, but it's like I myself live in the middle of nowhere, so it's just I it's not that don't care, it's just I never think of anyone's like safety, quote unquote, because it's almost not necessary. Like there's no one for safety to be thought of besides myself and my
Yeah.
wife. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, that must be like really because even like you said, Seattle, Washington, right? So
Yes.
have you or anyone in your area have anything like have experienced any kind of murder hornets or anything, or has that kind of died off?
So we actually are on the east side. So
Okay.
Seattle and all that's on the west side. We are on Northeast Washington. So we are quite a few hours from them. I think it's about 5 or 6 hours, but we are on high alert because they have cases over there. And
Mhm.
they found a few that are alive. They've eradicated nests, which is amazing because you got to see like the Washington Department of Agriculture posted this huge cool video, and you got to see them eradicate this nest of murder hornets and found tons of queens and crazy things. But we do take preventative measures for our bees, and that's what we've been working on right now, is just to protect them year round now at this point, because their rumor has it that they will come here eventually. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah, because it always is. I mean, like again,
Yeah.
like the mites, they're so small. What are you really gonna do about it?
Yeah.
Like it would almost take like a Bill Gates kind of like mosquito laser setup. And even then it would
Yeah.
only take care of that 15-foot radius that it can guard. But I
Absolutely.
mean, so I think I heard like the Japanese bees, like they pile on and heat up. So do the bees that y'all take care of or whatever species those are, do they have the same defense techniques, or is that just something where they can't get hot enough, or what's really the issue with them? Why it's not such a big deal in like Japan and China?
As far as I know, our honeybees are smaller. And so I did video the other
Okay.
day and posted it on TikTok of my honeybees creating enough heat and they were trying to kill a wasp. It took them
Hmm.
quite a bit of time. But what I did was that they were balling the wasp the same way that they ball the queen, which is to heat her up and try to kill her. And that's their defense mechanisms if they want to get something out of their hive. As soon as I put them on the ground, the ball dissipated and they let it go, because after that, there was no more threat. I don't believe that our honeybees, our Western honeybees, are able to do it yet. I mean, I'm not specific, I'm not proficient in everything that I know about my colonies, but I just don't think that they have the capabilities yet, because from what I've learned, the murder hornet will attack a bee and they will start chewing them up and just completely annihilating a hive, and then that starts to send the alert pheromones that they're murdering everything, and then soon you'll have tons more hornets, and within anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes you can have 60,000 dead bees and it's over. So I don't think that they
Wow.
enough time to do it. I've watched numerous videos on them decimating a hive and how fast it goes, but I just don't think that our bees are adapted to those kinds of situations because they've never had to deal with it. We have
Hmm.
ants here, skunks, we have mice, we have tons of wasps right now. It's just a continual battle that our honeybees are constantly up against, and that's just something they haven't seen yet.
Wow, that is incredible. So yeah, because it would kind of make sense if there was like a small hive of wasps that they're just like, oh, honey, let's kill the couple, steal like I
Yeah.
don't know how they would like steal, maybe like stick it to their legs and feed it to their larva. But yeah, so like the hormones and pheromones that the bees put out of like attack, we're being attacked, actually attracts in more murder hornets.
Well, and I think it's the murder hornet themselves when they do the killing
Oh,
action that they're emitting a pheromone, and it's a kill pheromone that attracts the other murder hornets. And so I
wow.
do know, like our hornets here, we have bald-faced hornets and different hornets, different wasps on our property. They will come down, they swoop down, and they love to eat the thorax of the honeybee because it's meaty. It's a meaty flesh.
Hmm.
So they chew on them, they remove their thorax, and they chew it up, and then they eat it as a meatball and feed it to their young. So
Okay.
for me, I've been the crazy lady that sits out there with a fly swatter and I will be going to town killing a bunch of wasps. But then you have a bunch of dead wasps on the ground and those wasps eat those wasps and it just continues. It's always just a matter of the battle of the strongest where I'm at.
Yeah, that's crazy because like just imagining because like it really is like a fight to the death out there, especially because I mean, and that's another thing. Like I have a lot of friends that just they're like I have there's some vegan friends, but then and they don't really necessarily understand that that's nice, but you live in an apartment or you live in a house, nature does not care. Nature like really messes you up or will mess you up if you let it. So it really is the survival of the fittest out there.
It is.
But
It's complicated, but it is. And you see it once you become a beekeeper, it really grounds you with the world and what the earth is telling you. And there's so many things that the bees teach you that you would never even imagine or even have thought of. And it has been just absolutely life changing. The things I have learned from the bees, and I've seen their demeanors and everything that they teach me about the whole entire surroundings of where we live.
yeah, absolutely. So how does one like I see a lot of different beekeepers especially their TikToks, their Instagram videos and like I like you can almost tell the difference between a beginning beekeeper because they're fully suited up and then you have like the experienced one that's maybe they have like long hair like yours so maybe they wear like just a small veil, like an almost insignificant kind of veil just to keep them out of the hair. But then if they
Yeah.
have short enough hair or if they have it up in a bun, then they'll just like freehand bees when they're transplanting swarms. Is that just something that you learn over time? Just the experience of, well, these bees aren't like buzzing angrily, so we can just go ahead and scoop them up?
So one of the things I'm going to be honest with you about is a matter of docility.
Hmm.
So I have not been able to do my beekeeping unsuited until this year. I went ahead and decided to open our first TikTok account. And I said, you know what, I'll just work all the social media avenues so that way we can grow our business. We can teach more people, things like that. Well, I have originally started with two of the most docile races of bees, and they have been amazing. And so at the beginning of the season, they're super calm. So I had long hair at the time. I just recently cut it, but it's a matter of keeping your face protected. Nobody wants to be
Hmm.
stung in soft areas. So it has
Yeah.
nothing to do with hair specifically. Like I
Okay.
just for the first time got stung in the head the other day and it hurts really bad, which I've never been stung in my head ever. But basically, it's a matter of just docility and the time of the year. So right now in the beginning parts of spring, everybody's happy. We're getting started and there's a ton of forage for the bees. But as soon as that forage runs out and summer comes and starts getting hot, the wasps start coming out, all the other pests that are annoying them and bothering them, that's whenever they start to lose their docility. And that's where you can see the game change. I've been able to rescue some of the swarms. And when the swarms are there on a tree or somewhere else, their tummies are full of honey. So they're super docile. So I was able to actually get a bunch of bees. It was 30,000, big size bees out of a tree, and I was able to shake them and get them into the box. And it's an amazing video. I'm totally not suited up, and I didn't receive any stings at all, zero. There was nothing to be afraid of. The person behind me, he was just standing there. Nothing happened to him, but it's all just a matter of them in their swarm mode that keeps them nice and happy, and they're totally fine.
Wow. Yeah, because those swarms are incredible. Like
Yeah.
it's wild. It's almost like they self-replicate hives. So you like even yourself, like if you started with 2, next year it could technically be 4, and then 8 and 20 and then 100. Like
Yeah.
how tempting is it to just keep going? But then again, you said like you have your own, like you have like restrictions. Like, is there any
Yeah.
restrictions to where you like, oh, I've got 7 hives, but that's the max. So, but now I'm going to have 14. So what do you
So
do at that point?
geographically, yeah, geographically, it's up to you. So as a beekeeper, the good rule of thumb is that you want to manage your bees so that they don't swarm. Swarming is a great sign of a healthy colony where they split off from 1 into 2 because they're just too full. However, there's swarm techniques that beekeepers can utilize to be able to not have their bees swarm. If you want to have them swarm, fine. You can basically mimic a swarm by taking one hive and splitting it into 2.
Hmm.
Option 2, if they do swarm, it is your job as a beekeeper to try your best to basically prevent that from happening. And the only reason for that is because a lot of times swarms will go to a location where you can get them. And then from there, if you don't catch them in time, they go to a new location that's their home. And that's where you've been seeing all over the media where people have 60,000 bees living in their wall. So I have been known to go and get bees and get them out of people's homes. And so the problem is if you live in cities and places like that, a swarm of bees can be very intimidating. And then also a swarm of bees can go wreak havoc in someone's home. I mean, they need to stay alive in the home so that they can keep the honey cooled and things like that. The second you kill them or you spray pesticides on them, and all that honey is going to start melting in your wall, and you're going to have squirrels and mice, and then it becomes this huge snowball effect.
Oh yeah, no, God, I could only imagine
Yeah.
60,000 bees worth of honey and just like, I mean, good God, like how many pounds of honey could that possibly be given like maybe like because I've seen a whole bunch of videos like there was like this one 5-year-old and it was like honestly it might have been your video like it was like a really old hive you could tell the honey was like this dark amber color and it just looked so heavy. It looked like so much
Yeah.
honey.
Yeah. So a lot of times, during your first year, whenever you have honeybees and they go from being, if you buy bees and they're 10 pounds of bees, like 10,000 bees, what ends up happening is those bees will just multiply. And usually a good healthy hive is about anywhere from 60 to 80,000 bees.
Mhm.
They're going to have probably anywhere from 100 to 200 pounds inside of that hive full of beeswax. The bees themselves, the honey, the pollen, all of it weighs a lot. And so that's basically what you're contending with when they're living in your home is their whole entire hive is basically structured inside of your building, wherever it may be that they take residence.
And you said about 200 pounds overall for the hive.
Yeah, because when we go to weigh our hives, like over the winter time, we need to make sure that both of our deeps are super full. And then if any of them have produced honey, then we can leave it up top for them. So that's another one where those little boxes full of 10 frames of honey can easily weigh 100 pounds. So it just depends on how heavy the hive is, but it's our job to make sure they're the heaviest before they go into winter. So that way they can eat it the whole entire time during the winter, and that way they can survive.
That is incredible. So 100 pounds per box.
Typically, it's about 100 pounds per
Wow.
box. I was lifting one the other day to try to do, and I do have some of the swarms that I caught that were 30,000 bees, and in a month, they made it up to 60,000. They have both boxes full, completely full, edge to edge, full of honey, beeswax, pollen, the brood, everything. And they're well over 100 pounds. They are very extremely heavy, and you're just lifting them and turning them and moving them and doing everything.
That is incredible. I didn't even like, I mean, sure. I was like, surely there's a lot of stuff. Now, what percentage of that would be like honey? Like 50 pounds of honey, 20 pounds of honey?
Maybe about 30 to 40, because usually you have 2 frames on the outside are honey, and then sometimes maybe 2 to 4. And as you keep getting further in, that's all honeybees. So those are all the brood that's in the middle.
Okay. Yeah, I was about to say, Jesus. Like, I mean, because even
Yeah.
imagine like a 5 year old, like, I mean, because like you said, like rats and squirrels, like 20, 30 pounds of honey for a single rat. That's almost a year itself.
Yeah, and the problem is like you have different states where their yield is 5, 6 times the amount of ours. If you go on the west side, they have tons more honey than we do. They can easily harvest 300 pounds of honey, no problem. And it just depends on how many supers they get and how big their blackberry, bloom is and things like that. I mean, they have massive blooms in different locations around the United States where they just get a lot more honey than we do.
That is again, I am just taken back. Like, that is so much honey. Like, oh, because like, so what is like, so you said like the first year you normally, because this is what I hear, rule of thumb is the first year or so you let the bees like kind of like build
Yeah.
up their stashes and everything. I think it's the first box or the first two boxes.
Yeah, so the first two boxes they live in, and those are called deeps, and those are your big boxes that they live in, and they raise their family. And from there, you go ahead and add a honey super on, and if they produce anything above those two boxes, then usually you can harvest it. During the first year, your main focus is to have those two boxes get full, and then you're done. So where I'm at, I'm densely forested and I don't have a lot of forage, and the amount of bees around me is a little bit of a complication. But all of my 2-year-old bees that are on their second year and above, those are the ones that always produce honey every year.
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
so let's say like per crate, like beeswax and honey, what's the profit margin? Like, what's the price that normally can go for?
Super sad. So, from what I've been researching, because I'm not a commercial beekeeper, commercial
Uh-huh.
beekeepers have the ability to have thousands of hives and they are feeding the world with honey. They are doing an amazing job. And so, for them, their honey goes really cheap. And by cheap, I mean like you can buy a gallon of commercial honey for $56 a gallon. That's actually a really good price. Now, if you go to your local Walmart, you can buy 5 pound honey container for $12.88, and that's coming from Texas or different states. Now, the
Mhm.
thing is with commercial, you can charge, it's unfortunate, they're not making enough money. And I believe that commercial should be charging a lot more for honey because honey is so valuable and it takes so much of the bees' work to make honey. But me, as a smaller beekeeper with only 20 hives, I unfortunately charge a lot more. So I charge almost $1.50 an ounce. And the reason for that is because you'll get like a 4-ounce jar and I charge about $6. Well, now jar inflation has been a problem. So it's usually $1 for the jar. And then you get $5 for the honey, which that helps feed our apiary. So for me, it's better to sell smaller quantities because if not, I run out. I only get usually about 5 gallons a year, and that's just because I'm starting out and I'm splitting every year. But realistically, people should be paying a lot more for local, good quality honey that's all based off of our area.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that in like a general aspect, like I don't like things being so cheap. It's great, only
Yeah.
because it comes out of necessity. But like honey, like a hamburger at McDonald's, should like a burger, like something that you eat. A meal should not cost $1. Like nothing should just cost $1. Like I feel like a lot, and I don't know if this is just like, I honestly don't know what it is, but like everything is just so cheap. And I don't really understand why, because you don't normally associate something being cheap as something being good for you.
Being healthy. No.
No.
And to be honest with you, as for profitability wise, I mean, I think I know a lot of the profitability is being a pollinator. I tried my first hand at it this year. I did it for free. But when you do things for free, it's a huge cost. It costs gas, it costs time, it costs a lot of work away from my bees that are at home. And then unfortunately, I did have a hive that died because of ants. So
Oh
that
my
was
God.
extremely traumatic. And so the heat wave, we had a heat wave come through here and it was 115 here, and that's not normal for us.
No.
So with that heat wave, one hive died. They were infiltrated by ants, and it was just absolutely sad. So then my other two larger hives were just struggling with ants. So at that point, I made the decision to just pull them. I'm bringing all my hives home. I'm not even going to do it anymore. And I don't feel that pollination is for me. I like keeping everything that I do small scale. So for me to try to keep raising bees and be able to afford the equipment for them to live in, I decided as a company next year, because I have this my 4th year of beekeeping, I would like to start selling bees. So local bees, my bees have overwintered for 3 years in a row for 3 winters, and they have been amazing. So some of my queens are 2.5 years old. And with that being said, queens only live 1 to 5 years, give or take, based on pesticides, usually only a year. So for
Mhm.
my queens to be 2.5 years old, they're actually doing really well. And I would really like to have more local bees that are adapted to the Pacific Northwest. So as a company, that's where I am hoping to find profitability so I can keep going and keep expanding and doing what I love to do, which is raising bees.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no reason that you shouldn't really. But what explain like the whole bee hierarchy, because I mean, I think like whenever someone thinks of a bee, it's like the bee movie where they're like driving around in this like wild, like, and of course they're not driving, but they're like,
Right.
oh, we're like 3 days old and we graduated yesterday and now we work for the rest of our lives. Like, is that like an accurate portrayal? Or do bees really live for like a week or a month or however long they live? Like, what's the
So
cycle of the normal drone worker and queen bee?
yeah, so it's kind of the bee movie was disappointing because it's all based off of males, and the hives themselves are actually female run. So with the beehives, you actually have one queen bee, and she is the one that lives on average 1 to 5 years, give or take. The queen bee is the one that lays eggs up to 2,500 eggs a day. Then you have your drone bees, and your drone bees live anywhere from usually about, I think it was up to 2 months is how long the drone bees live, but then the worker bees only live for 6 weeks. So that's a typical worker bee schedule is 6 weeks. So they say from the first day of them being laid as an egg, they will be born on their 3rd day, and they hatch and be born into a larva. And then from the larval stage, the honeybee will actually go ahead and she will go ahead and be born for her second birth, which is on her 21st day. And then on the 21st day, she will emerge from her cell. So I have this amazing video of her. She's super pretty and golden hairy. And that's her birth. She's born on her 21st day. She stays inside the hive and she will do all her duties. And then from there, on her 21st birthday again, she will go ahead and go out and forage and fly. And so there's like a rule of 3. Every 3 weeks, the bees have different things that they do. And then after that, they're dead. So it's a very quick, short lifespan for the worker bees, but the worker bees are the ones that rule the colony. So they are the ones that tell the queen where to lay her eggs based off of, we need this many more worker bees, or hey, we need this many more male bees for procreation purposes. And they'll also start to go ahead and whenever they need the queen bee to be skinny to go fly, whenever they want to swarm, they'll stop feeding her for a few days to make her skinny. And then they'll go ahead and take her on a flight to swarm away with the bees. They will supersede her and they will kill her and then make a new queen with her freshest egg, which is her daughter. So basically, it's all the female worker bees that end up taking care of everything. During the winter, we have noticed that some of our winter bees can live over 6 months. It just depends on how cold the climates are. So worker bees can actually live around 6 months in the colder climates. So in the summer, 6 weeks. In the winter, they live a lot longer. And then what will happen is you'll start to see them towards March, April, May, a ton of die off. And those are all your winter bees that are finally dying.
That is wild. So the queen bee is essentially just there solely for like giving birth. She almost has no say. She's just there for procreation.
She is, and one of the coolest things of all, and this is amazing, but I found out, which I'm super excited about, was when I first got into beekeeping, is that when the bees make a queen, the virgin queen will be born, and then she will go out on a mating flight, and she will mate with 15 to 20 drones. And then once she is done mating with them, she will go back in the hive, and that's where she starts laying her eggs and does everything. Now we have what's called a drone congregation area in our bee yard. So I was going around and I like to pick up all the bees on the ground and inspect them, find out, who's requeening, are there dead queens on the ground? But I will find spent drones on the ground, which is super cool. So you will actually see their endophallus hanging out of them, and you'll tell that someone has successfully been mated, which is awesome because I will find them, which is hard to find. Usually they say they go miles up in the air and they will be flying somewhere in the middle of nowhere to a drone congregation area where all the drones will hang out, and then virgin queens will come up and fly and get mated. And so it's neat to see that. And then also when the drone honeybee ends up mating with the queen, his endophallus gets ripped off and his guts are exposed and he dies. So it's super
Mhm.
cool because that's his one main purpose. But for that, it's nice to be able to see. And I just enjoy finding them in my yard, knowing that my queens are getting healthy and mated.
Yeah, that's got to be great because that's literally dollar signs. Like
Yeah.
that's like more bees, more queens, more hives, more ability to make this company expand and grow and succeed. So that being said, what does it take? Like what's like the price? Because like again, like you said, like bees are expensive in the winter and the summer, and you said they're cheaper. Like
Yeah.
what would be like what's the best thing for like is it best to start off with just one hive to see if you like it? And if it dies off, okay, you didn't spend too much money, it's no big deal. Or like what's the best course of action?
So,
Let's say someone's in the middle of nowhere, they have
yeah.
like all the land, all the flowers, like they're set. All they literally just need bees.
So in order to do bees, your main rule of thumb is you always want to have two. So you don't want to have
Mhm.
one because of the die off. So if you have two, you always have a backup. If something happens and you go queenless for too long, then all of a sudden you don't have any fresh eggs and they can't make another queen, your hive is doomed. So they'll
Mhm.
end up dying off of natural causes and then you have nothing left. But if you have a second hive, you can use the frame of fresh eggs and you can put them in there and then they can go ahead and utilize those frames to make a new queen. So it's always best to have two. When you're doing your research, the best time is during the winter to get your best prices for hives. Typically, it could cost any new beekeeper about $1,000. So about $1,000 to have two hives, and that's just to get started. And that is your basic equipment because you want to have, even the cheap suits are fine, just as long as you have a suit, a smoker, a brush. You got to have your frame grippers, you got to have your gloves. I prefer nitrile now because I have a bunch of dexterity issues. And so I don't like the leather gloves. I squish a lot of bees. So I do go through nitrile gloves a lot, but things like that. So you could easily expect $1,000 on a good day. And that's before the cost of bees. And then you got to add in your bees. They could range anywhere from 150 to 200. It just depends on if you're buying a package of bees or a nuke of bees, which is a half of a colony, things like that. So definitely easy $1,000 to get started.
Wow. So I mean, that is a fair bit of money for, but just for like the honey alone. Like I've got a friend in England. Shout out to Sam Mead Making. He does mead. So if you
Yeah.
don't, I'm sure, and I'm sure you do know. I'm not trying to tell a beekeeper, it's like, do you know what mead is? But it is a alcoholic beverage that utilizes almost exclusively honey. So like have you ever thought of anything like that? Because that itself, that's actually been really making a comeback, like
Yeah.
believe it or not.
I have not, and the reason is because our neighbors gave us some. It was a huckleberry raspberry mead, and it was amazing. The best mead I've ever had. I don't usually do anything with sulfites because it just gives me a huge
Hmm.
reaction. But it was amazing. It was the best thing I've ever tasted, and I just know that Washington has a lot of rules and regulations when it comes to alcohol making. So making mead is
Uh,
complicated. If you want to be a mead seller, it's complicated. Selling honey here is complicated, especially with shipping. I only do mine local and free local pickup. I'm not into shipping my honey yet because there's a lot of rules and regulations. But yeah, mead is amazing. I do know that there's a bunch of cool stuff that you can go do with mead. You can go to mead conventions and have it graded and all this really cool stuff. And then we do know other beekeepers that we originally bought our bees from, and they are into making mead, which is super awesome.
yeah, that's incredible. I mean, just
Yeah.
I feel like because like it's whenever I listen to like I would listen to like a Joel Salatin book, and he would always like express it's like if you're a farmer or you're farming, which I mean, you're technically bee farming,
Yes.
you're
Yes.
like the most profitable thing is processing, not necessarily processed like processed food, but processing, expanding one thing into another. So it would be like bees to honey to mead would, I mean, because,
Yeah.
and then beeswax to candles, like mead and beeswax candles is almost its final form. So one would imagine, I mean, and I can't even imagine why Washington would be so uptight about alcohol production. I mean, because I
There's just
mean,
a lot of everywhere you go is a lot of rules and regulations. When we moved here 3 years ago, I've been just investigating everything. I want to be legit on everything. My moral compass only swings one way. And
oh,
so for me,
absolutely.
I was like, I have to have a business license. I have to pay my taxes. I have to do this. And I meet a lot of companies that are just companies with a name, but they don't legally own it and they don't pay their taxes and things like that. And I felt that this is something I need to do for myself. So I with that being said, I try to follow all the rules and regulations. There's a ton of FDA rules and regulations when it comes to hygiene products and different things that you have to do in order to sell cosmetics, you know, lotions, chapsticks, anything that's
Mhm.
bee products. The bees make so many different products that are very profitable. And if you go through like the commercial grocery store and you buy chapstick, you buy your different soaps and different things like that in your cosmetics, you can read most of your ingredients have beeswax in all of them.
Oh,
So it's
absolutely.
a really popular thing, and it's very profitable if you allow it to be. My company has not been to that level because it all goes to the bees. So for me, it allows me to buy more equipment, raise more bees, and that's the premise right now. Is just mainly feed the bees, take care of the bees, educate the public, and do a bunch of things like that. And I think the biggest challenge I've had so far is not trying to necessarily have like great, amazing company. That would be awesome. However, the children are the future. I'm not going to be around forever. My three children have got, they're the future for everything, you know, with taking care of the planet, feeding the planet. The bees are agriculture, like you said. We are raising bees that are agriculture that feed the world. And it is so important that they know what to do to be able to help mankind in the future because we're not going to be here forever. And you know what's going to happen if the bees are gone, the pollinators are gone. I mean, they say that, you know, if one of these certain specific pollinators, there's a pollinator and a plant that have adapted to each other, and that plant is specific to that one pollinator species.
Hmm.
And so if that bee species dies, then that plant dies, and then we have that one plant is missing from the group, and so is the bee. So it continues on the chain reaction where eventually we just have all the overly processed commercial foods and nothing's natural anymore and synthetic. And it's just, I don't feel like that's going to be very healthy in the future if we continue what we're doing.
No, especially given the fact that I mean, again, mead, the very first alcoholic beverage, because for hundreds of thousands of years we have just literally like, oh, there's a bee. Let's grab
Yes.
it real quick. I get stung a couple of times. I'm not allergic, so I don't die, and we just munch on this beehive. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
now I've seen a lot of people take just a chunk out of a hive. Is beeswax edible?
Absolutely. So it is not digestible, but it does go through your body and process just like corn.
Uh-huh.
But you do get you do get the benefits of the propolis, and you also get the benefits of the pollen inside of your wax, which is awesome. And then it always reminds me when we were kids to have those wax lips at Halloween, and they always tasted really weird. They were red wax lips, and
Hmm.
so that to me, eating wax is similar to that. But it is absolutely amazing to actually chew it and have fun with it. It's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, because like hunter gatherers, like and I've said this on I said this on yesterday's podcast. Like we are like humans are so explorative and so just creative that there is a root, there's a tuber in the Amazon. I can't remember what it's called for the life of me. I probably should have a cue card, but it's like they take the root and then it has to be fermented, it has to be boiled, it has to be like get fermented on the ground, buried, washed, rinsed, and like for like 10 different steps. And
Yeah.
every step until that 10th step, it's fatal, poisonously
Yeah.
fatal. So, I mean, so a person like an entire group and this is like all over the place, it's like in like a
Yeah.
wild root, a wild tuber. So someone not only discovered how to, but imagine how many people died trying to discover it, and then just like, oh, old crazy Bob's like he thinks he's going to eat that root, and he's like, okay, I didn't die here, just like I died here, but I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah.
So we've been eating all these natural plants and these like honey, these tubers, everything, but and this is hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, but there's no way that we can just be like Doritos and soda for the rest of our life. Like that's just not natural. So it's critical that we keep these kind of pollinators, these natural ways of food, and just all this stuff just to make sure that we keep going in how we are now, because it's just not possible any other way.
It's been really neat because when I first moved up here, I started noticing and exhibiting signs right before we moved of just random things. And then I went to the doctor and then they confirmed fibromyalgia, like all 18 points out of 18 points. And I had just gotten into beekeeping. So I'm like, okay. So it's really brought me down to earth and basically all the basics with the dietary needs that you have to be able to take care of yourself. But what I
Mhm.
love to do specifically is to go to farmers markets. And so for us, it's neat because we have a farmers market twice a week, May to October. We can go buy the freshest foods from our friends that live a few miles down from us to do farming. They do different types of farming than what we do. And it's super neat because we can just bring all that healthy food home. We have a bunch of people that we work with that butcher their own cows. And so we can buy the real beef
Mhm.
from them. But all those little tiny things that you can implement in your life. I've been talking to people and just letting them know
Farmers market, farmers market made a September, and just like we were talking about, like the benefits of like having organic food at your like at your disposal. And we were at about 50 minutes, so let's just go for another 10. I'm so sorry. I'm definitely planning having you back on, but
no, no
this
problem. I really am appreciative of this. This is good. It's good for me to learn. It's good for me to talk, things like that. But one of the things that I have felt that I really, really enjoy is going to the farmers markets. I've been going for the past 3 years. And with going to the farmers markets here, we get lucky that May to October, we actually get to have 2 farmers markets a week. And so that allows us to go get some of the fresh fruits and veggies, and we get different meats from different farmers who all have everything that's local to us.
yeah, I mean
Sorry,
that's no, you're good. That's always such a
it
good thing.
stopped. It said it stopped, and then so I stopped talking.
Oh no, you're fine. Just go again. I am so sorry about that. I don't know why it's doing this.
That's okay. Do you want me to start over?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Okay. So basically, with us, I'm able to go to the farmers market, which is super neat. We have 2 farmers markets a year during the year. It's 2 times a week, and we're able to go May to October. And with the farmers markets, we're able to get the different vegetables and fruits from all of our friends and farmers. And then we're able to actually get local meat, which is super neat. With that being said, it's a lot of just farm to table, which is what I like to do for my honeybees, is be able to sell things that are farm to table for the public. And for all of us, it's just a nice full circle to live healthier and have different means. But for me, it's a good education platform to talk to different beekeepers, people that want to get into beekeeping. I have people that have been beekeeping for years, but they kill their bees every year. And so basically, I offer to them a bunch of mentorship, and I try to give them tips and tricks and things like that that they can utilize from my success with beekeeping. And that way they can go ahead and continue the journey, which is my main premise, is keeping your bees alive and things like that.
Yeah, that I mean that is all that's always amazing. That's always what it kind of boils down to, is like the mentor prospect. So like I was talking about, like processing the what you like grow and what you like cultivate. So it's almost like for you, it's not only the beeswax candles, not only the mead possibly, but also like beekeeping classes or beekeeping, like your TikTok, for example, which I mean is, I'm sure you're educating hundreds of thousands of people potentially in the future just by all the videos that you put out. Is that just something that weighs, like have you ever like sat down and thought about that? Because like I've talked to a couple people who've like really gotten out there and like really like cemented themselves through like a couple of videos that go viral, and it's like I live stream and like 100, 200, 300 people are sitting here just like hanging on to every word I say.
Yeah. I feel more confident as I gain with my schooling and things like that. I just passed my journeyman, which is 1 level below Washington State Master Beekeeper. But I passed the education portion. There's some other things that you have to do in order to become the journeyman level, which is super awesome. But I just don't feel like I have the confidence in myself yet to be proficient in what I'm raising. I want to be proficient in all the colony information, the science behind beekeeping, everything that you need to know to keep bees alive. And as I get that knowledge, I believe that in the future I will be doing more things. Currently, I do YouTube my inspections, and so I basically just am reiterating what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and how to help other people with their inspections. So I do a little bit of that. You know, I'm a one-man band, like I said, so I do set up my tripod, and what you're seeing is real. I do some live videos from time to time with TikTok. Some of them don't really gain a lot of viewers if you're not doing something that's crazy cool and amazing. To me, it's everything. But when you're suited up, they don't get the feeling that it's that scary, even though you can get stung at any time and it hurts all the time. But I did do one live swarm removal that I did on top of my truck, and I had a live one, and I got a couple thousand people, which was awesome. But it's things like that that is just mainly trying to grab the viewer, you know, and trying to figure out what feeds them. But basically, I'm trying to be as normal as possible. I want people to see that you can do things suited and unsuited, depending. And then also your skill level, different things like the realness inside the colony. It's not always about honey. Like everybody's always about honey. Well, this beekeeper does this and I get free honey from it. And it's like, okay, but I only have 20 hives and I'm trying to save the planet one beehive at a time. I mean, that's the whole premise. And so to me, it's mainly just keeping the bees alive and feeding the bees and caring for the bees. And then of course, as things evolve, I have a bunch of female beekeepers on Women in Beekeeping on Facebook. And from there, it's women all around the world and we all learn from each other. And then from there, I've been able to gain a bunch of valuable information for my company, you know, more about classes and different things. I do currently offer tours of my property. It is paid tours because there is a liability, you know, with getting stung with bees and you have to suit up and that. But eventually, you know, it's kind of hard because you want to like be the best mentor and you want to say, yeah, come over to my house and watch me inspect my bees and I'll teach you all this stuff. But people don't realize there's a biosecurity involved in this. And when they're coming from their home, if they have diseases and different things in their bee yard and they come into my yard, they can transmit those on their shoes, on their clothing, on their hive tools, and like that. And then it'll basically ruin my whole entire bee yard. And so people really don't understand that basic science of everything, where then it kind of draws the fine line for me. And it's like, I've worked so hard and spent so much time and energy and money and everything else into this that I would hate for something, you know, so simple to be overlooked. And then all of a sudden my whole apiary is gone. I think it's well, I do know there's a couple of foul broods that you can get into. There's European and American. And one of them, you have to burn everything and it lives in the ground for 50 years. So you'd have to burn all your hives. And so when that happens, it's just things like that that you can't risk in life anymore. Life's too short, you know, to put all your hard work and then see it all gone. So yeah, I don't know for my future just yet, but I do spend a lot of time, you know, utilizing social media, of course, for my children's future. And then of course, I want to be in with the times. I want to know, you know, and be able to keep learning with everyone else how to be better.
Yeah, I mean, that really is always the goal. You said earlier something about you becoming a journeyman. Congratulations, by the way. What's the hierarchy of these like bee classes and like, because I know falconers kind of have the same thing where they have a tiered hierarchy.
Wow.
And like, I think like a master can like own like bald eagles. And like, I think like the Auburn, the football team that's in our state in Auburn, Alabama, they're called the War Eagles because they have a falconer that has a golden eagle.
Wow.
That they fly across the football field. What is that kind of what's a hierarchy as far as like, I assume it's based off of education and past and certifications. What's the kind of process, at least where you are?
So in general, from what I gather is you have your beginner beekeeper, then you have apprentice, which is the next level up. Then you have your journeyman beekeeper, and then you have your master beekeeper for Washington State. And so master is your top tier. I found out that recently they changed some rules around, and so you have to be a beekeeper for 9 more years after you've obtained your journeyman. So basically, I've got 9 more years after I get state certified as journeyman. Then I could qualify to start working on my master's for, you know, to be able to become a master beekeeper. A lot of people will just use Montana State University, but it's pretty pricey. I'm choosing to basically just use, you know, the avenues that I can to get to the right level that I need. I kind of want to be proficient in the state that I'm in, just based off of the area that I'm at. What do I know? These people are so experienced here. And I've met some people that are master beekeepers. They don't even know the basic biology of honeybees and they can't decipher the differences. And it kind of shows you the education level of what you're paying for to pass a class versus what you're actually gaining, by years of experience and things. So I can understand why it would take me 9 more years to become master. I never went to college or anything like that. And I just feel like for myself as a person, I really want to go ahead and be proficient in what I'm using in the colonies and take care of everything. And then from there, I mean, yeah, it's just a title, but at the same time, it makes me feel more comfortable that what I'm telling other people is actually giving them good information and solid information.
Yeah. And that's always the case. It's just the confidence in yourself, because that's really what does it for the majority of people. But I mean, look, it was incredible having you on. You're definitely going to be a recurring podcast guest. Let everybody know where they can find you at, how they can follow you, and let's get you out there a bit more.
Thank you very much. So we are Hunting Bee Apiary. So the word hunting, the word bee, and then apiary, APAIRY. So we're Hunting Bee Apiary on Facebook. Instagram is at Hunting Bee Apiary. TikTok, of course, which has been awesome and fun, is at Hunting Bee. It's just hunting and the letter or the word bee, BEE. Our website, I have a couple of them now. So I actually own hunting and then the letter b.com. So HUNTINGB.com is our website. I have a wonderful blog for anybody that wants to get into beekeeping. I blog about everything that has made me successful for the past 3 years of raising bees. And then, of course, I have our Shop Now button. Then you can just check out our website. There's a ton of cool information. But other than that, you are always more than welcome to contact us anytime with questions. We do tons of mentorship for free. And basically, all the people that email me all the time, random things, I'm constantly always willing to respond and help everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. All right. Well, hey, again, great having you on, guys. If you want to follow her, she's just giving you all the information that you need. And if you liked what you saw here, please subscribe to me. But have a great day. We'll see you later, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.